Let's talk about hybrid mixing and why I think it's the best way to mix. Okay, so first off, what is hybrid mixing? Hybrid mixing is the halfway point between mixing all in the box with only plugins and mixing on a console with all outboard gear. So the idea is that you would choose very specific pieces of gear to go on very specific channels to handle the processing for very specific things. For instance, if you're using all plugins on your entire mix except your vocal compressor is hardware, that's hybrid mixing. If you're using a whole bunch of plugins, but your vocal EQ and compressor and your drum bus compressor and your kick and snare EQ and compressors and a reverb and a handful of other things are all hardware, that's hybrid mixing. Now there's a couple reasons why I think it's the best way to mix. First, I don't want to get into the hardware versus software debate in this video. For the sake of this topic, let's just agree that hardware and software do not do the same things. There are trade-offs, pros and cons to both of them. Now for me personally and my tastes, I really like a lot of the compression that does the heavy lifting. I like that to be hardware. The sound that's in my head that I'm trying to get out the speakers, I can get there faster and easier with a hardware compressor. My Mixbus, I mix through a pair of preamps, then it goes to my bus compressor on my Mixbus, and then it goes to the SBL the stereo imaging processor. I like this. These things do things that plugins don't do for me. Now on the other side, I'm constantly automating different plugin parameters throughout my mix. I want my EQs to like sweep down with a low pass filter and sweep back up. I want my compression to change throughout the song on a particular track. Maybe I want my effects to change fairly drastically throughout the song. This is really hard to do with hardware. So I want to break down exactly what things I use hardware on and what things I pretty much want to stay in the box on. And I want to tell you why. I want to give you my reasons, and here's what I hope is that it will help you along your journey. And if you're getting ready to incorporate some gear into your mixes, into your system so you can start hybrid mixing, I hope this will help you decide what to start with. It is wildly hot right now. Whew. Before we get into what hardware I use, there's links down in the description below this video to go check out all the pieces of gear that I have and that I use. Everything that I talk about in this video, there'll be a link down there to go check it out. See prices, see availability, all that kind of stuff. Those links go to Sweetwater. Sweetwater is sponsoring this video. Thank you very much to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. Anytime you need any piece of musical gear, jump on any one of my videos, click on any one of the links, and buy anything that you need, not just the items that are listed below. It costs you nothing extra, and it really goes a long way to help me make more videos like this, so help me help you. That was so cheesy. What? Thank you guys. I appreciate you using those links. Now, I've talked about this first part in other videos, my Mixbus. Now, I mix through a pair of preamps. I have a very specific couple preamps that I mix through. There's some very special video coming on just that topic soon. The important thing is that you find a pair of preamps that are the color that you like. I currently mix through a pair of Cappy Hiders, and they're perfect for me. But mix through a pair of preamps, and this goes a long way to impart color and analog gooiness into your mix. I have said for a long time that compression is still the weakest link of plugins. And I do still believe that. It's not to say that there's no good software compressors. Of course there are, and I use tons of them all the time. But compression is still the biggest weakness of software in my opinion. And so after my preamps that I mix through, my bus compressor is next. It's a Serpent SB4001. Love it, can't recommend it enough. Then it goes to the SBL, which I have a whole video on that. But keeping with the topic of compression being the weakest link, since I genuinely feel this way, this means that everything that I think needs compressed on most songs, that is a focal point of the song. It's very important to get right. I try to have hardware compressors for those things. Now, after I started using a hardware bus compressor, the very next most important thing to me was vocals. So a vocal compressor was a very top priority very early on for me. Now, what's next down the line in terms of importance in a mix in terms of what tracks are going on? Well, for me personally, and for the things that I work on, it's kick drum and snare drum are the next most important things. But I can kind of get both of them with a drum bus compressor. And so a drum bus compressor was the next thing that I picked up. And then after that was a kick drum and a snare drum compressor, and it just kept on going down the line. Bass guitar and acoustic guitar and several different stereo compressors, so I have some options between stuff. But that was my path. Mixbus, vocal, drum bus, kick, and snare. Because those things, in my opinion, for my music and for the stuff that I do, those are the most important things to get sounding right. So a lot of investment in my hardware in the beginning was all about compression. Now, of course, you need an interface that can handle however many channels of ins and outs you need to mix this way. Now, I'm still rocking the old Apollo 16 Mark II. I've got no issues with it. I'm sure it'll get upgraded one day, but for now, it's still doing just fine for me. But this has 16 outputs and 16 inputs, so I can run 16 channels of individual hardware on through my interface. So I'm not gonna get too into what kind of interface you should buy, but you are gonna need however many channels of I/O that you'd like to use. Now, once I had all my heavy hitters of compression taken care of in hardware, then it became a little bit more selective. What's the next most important thing to me? And to me, it was a vocal EQ. I needed at least one just baller vocal EQ. Now, there's a million options and there's a million great sounding options. I've been using a Cappy BT50 for a really long time. One day that may change. One day I may add a few more options and have several options. Now, I'm not telling you guys what to buy or even suggesting it. There's so many good options out on the market currently, but a hardware vocal EQ was the next most important thing for me. Then for me personally, the next again was kick drum and snare drum. What's an EQ that I can get for kick drum and snare drum that does something for me that I can't get out of plugins? Now, this is my mindset when choosing hardware. How do I choose the pieces of hardware that benefit me in a way that I can't really get that thing out of plugins, and that helps me get the sound that's in my head out the speakers faster and easier and better? Now, at this point, you're probably sitting there thinking, but Colt, if hardware is so much better, why don't you just have hardware for everything? And that's a very good question that I actually forgot to answer when I was filming the video. I'm sitting here doing this thumbnail and I was like, oh, I forgot to put that in. There's a balancing act here between too much hardware and not enough hardware, in my opinion. The first is obviously cost. Every single one of these only goes on one channel at a time, and it's way more expensive than a plugin. So in order to have hardware for everything, well, you're kind of not really hybrid mixing anymore. And the cost to benefit ratio is just terrible once you get there. So cost is number one. Lack of physical space is number two. This goes way down the rabbit hole. Power consumption, the fact that my electric bill here is more expensive per month because of the gear than it would be without it. The fact that my AC runs nearly year-round. It can be 30 degrees outside and my air conditioning is still on in here because every one of these pieces of gear is like a candle sitting here burning the whole time. So the idea, I think, is to find the appropriate trade-off. Where is the sweet spot for you? Now, for me, it's probably a lot more hardware than it is for most people because I really like the sound of it and I'm going after a specific thing that hardware lets me achieve faster and easier. For you, it might be much less hardware, or it might be way more hardware, who knows? There's also recalls, the fact that I have to switch every single one of these knobs back to a very specific spot. I have to document where those knobs were on every single mix. That takes time. So to me, I'm constantly balancing this, and sometimes I'm balancing this per song. Maybe I'm working on a super clean pop song and I'm actually not gaining that much benefit by using all of this hardware. Well, in those cases, I may use only my Mixbus, or maybe only my Mixbus and my vocal chain. I might be working on a super organic country song or super organic indie rock song that's real vibey, in which case I'm gonna use every single piece of gear back here because it fits the vibe of the song. And I'm gonna sacrifice my ability to do recalls quickly for the sake that the song is gonna sound better. What I want the song to sound like, I'm gonna be able to more easily obtain or get to than if I was using all plugins. Okay, back to the video. To me, hybrid mixing was a game changer and continues to help me evolve my mixes and my work. So how do I actually incorporate this? Well, I've got a few patch bays and all the pieces of gear, the input and output of every single piece of gear shows up on the patch bay. And so when I want to mix with this, I'll just do a hardware insert on whatever, the vocal or the Mixbus or the kick or snare or whatever. That signal is then sent out of my interface. I actually have a whole video on this specific part, and I'll link it down below as well. That signal is sent out of my interface and goes to the patch bay. And on the patch bay, I will then connect whatever all pieces of gear I want on that particular insert point. So let's say it is my vocal chain. As of right now, for most things that I mix, I will put the hardware insert in Pro Tools. The signal comes out of my interface. First, it hits a Cappy VP28 Platinum for a little bit more color and for a high pass. Then it goes to my Cappy BT50, so that way that's my main EQ. Then it goes to a Pope Audio Bax 2020 EQ, which is like a high and low shelf, great EQ. And then it goes to the 1176, and then it goes back in through my interface. So with one single hardware insert on my vocal channel, there are 4 pieces of gear running on my vocal when I'm mixing. Now, sometimes there's only one piece of gear, EQ or compressor or whatever, but you can daisy chain as many of these together as you want off of a single insert point in Pro Tools or whatever DAW it is that you're using. Again, I'll link that whole video down below. I hope that this gave you a little bit better understanding of what hybrid mixing is. And what I really want with these videos is I hope that it helped your train of thought. I hoped that it modified your thinking on how to incorporate hardware into your music and into your mixes if it's something that you're interested in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop me a comment below. Let me know what hardware you mix with, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.